Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it right here with us, right here on NACTV. I'm Eoin Devereux, news reporter with the Banner Press, joined this week by owner, operator, publisher. Man, you got a lot on your business card, Ken. Ken Waddell. It's one of those business cards that you got to turn it over to the back and sort of continue reading, isn't it?
I got to lose weight somehow, so I got to keep busy.
Well, even at the point right now, you don't even need to hand out business cards. You pretty much know everybody around, so you don't need to sort of introduce yourself all that much anymore. So
it's the hat. The hat.
That's it. You need your own little certain something.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, again, appreciate you taking a few minutes, spending it here to learn a little bit about the goings-on behind the scenes at the Neepawa Banner Press, your weekly newspaper for Neepawa and the surrounding region. Some huge news. Very pleased to be able to share this right on the front page of this week's edition. It's something that's been talked about a little bit in the coffee shops and around the town here and there over the last few weeks, over the last few months. And now that little innuendo, that little hearsay, that little maybe, maybe not is actually come to fruition. And we're talking about a new nursing training program that is going to be coming right here to Neepawa. It's being put on and is being sort of paid for by the provincial government in cooperation with Assiniboine Community College based out of Brandon. Primarily based out of Brandon, though they do have satellites in other communities such as Dauphin and outlying communities. So it's wonderful that Neepawa is going to be able to be a big part of that, at least in my opinion, I think, Ken.
Well, it is. It's interesting. It's what goes around comes around, because there was a number of years ago they used to do various ACC courses here at the old resource center, which is now no longer there.
Yep.
But anyway, it was the home for courses, and then some of them were in fact nursing type courses, whether they were this one or not. And so it's a bit of a return to the past here. And some would argue that maybe ACC should never have left town, because it is they can't handle everybody in Brandon. They can space-wise, but the thing with having it in Neepawa is that people don't have to drive from here or a little ways north of here to Brandon. They can just come to Neepawa, and that's the big attraction. Of course, with the increase in population here and the potential students, it just makes sense at this time.
That's right. And if I remember correctly off the top of my head, it is going to be 25 student nurses that are going to be participating in this one-time program. It's interesting the way they're putting it together. This is some support in the financial amount of $2.1 million that's going to be coming from the province towards ACC, for ACC to be able to put this program on right here in Neepawa for about 25 student practical nurses. But it is, as I just said, Ken, one-time program.
Well, that's a bit of a mystery, because some of that money is going to go towards capital, that is equipment.
Right. For
training, beds and whatever all else they need. But I don't think that it's practical to even look at doing this one-off, because the town of Neepawa is going to have to provide a building. And the cat is out of the bag now, I guess, and the building they're looking at is the former RCMP barracks and or office. And I don't think the town would be real happy about committing, even if it was provincial money, into improving that building, and then only have it used once. So I think it's sort of the unspoken thing right now, is that likely it'll be used more than once. But the other thing is that in order to get enough people to staff the new hospital, I think they're going to need more than 25 nurses. And not all the 25 that come and take the course here are going to necessarily work in Neepawa.
No, that is true. And again, this is just a little bit of hearsay, a little innuendo we're talking about. We hope and we think that it might be more than a one-time, but we don't have any certainties or any confirmations on that. Not from the province, not from the town, not from ACC. No one in the know is sort of confirming whether or not that is. They're saying they're going straight and narrow down the line that this is a one-time program. Whether it is, whether it isn't, we'll let the future decide that. But it is something that is so needed. As you said, just before we went on air here, Ken, whether you're wearing a blue tie, whether you're wearing an orange tie, when it comes to provincial politics, A lot has sort of filtered away, a lot has sort of been lost over the decades when it comes to healthcare, especially in rural areas. And it's good to see that maybe, at least in some small way, it's starting to be made up for.
Well, that's true, and the thing is that we're seeing all the time. You see notices on Facebook and sometimes in the paper, or I should say social media, and in the papers and news stories that they can't consistently keep a number of the emergency rooms open around the country. We don't have emergency in McCreary, don't have emergency in Gladstone, I don't think ever. It's sporadic in Glenborough, it's sporadic in Carberry, it's sporadic in Minnedosa. And and that's all downloading on Neepawa now in a facility that's not really geared to handle it. The new hospital, I think, is going to have 12 or 14 examination rooms in the emergency room. Here they have 2.
Yep.
And they're trying to push everything through 2. They're shunting people off into side rooms and into actual wards for different things at times now because they're so overloaded. I was recently at the hospital and there was actually 3 doctors. 2 were working ER and 1 was taking regular consultation for surgery. And they were going flat out all day long.
Yep. Because that's the one thing we got to remember right here in Neepawa. Perhaps we're getting a little bit spoiled by all this good news that's been coming down the pike over the last 15 months or so. But moving ahead, we are the exception in Manitoba. We're not the rule. There are so many, as Ken said, he cited several large communities that do not have these opportunities for them right now, which is extremely disappointing. And we definitely shouldn't take that for granted.
No, you can't take anything for granted. You go back in history here and we wouldn't be doing, there's 2 big reasons why Neepawa is doing as well as it is. One is obvious, and that's High Life.
Yep.
The other on the medical side is that because we have a medical clinic with several doctors in it.
It's been proven. I mean, that has been volunteer, locally operated, locally run. People came together and made this work and worked very well. And that's been a calling card for Neepawa over the last many years.
And again, the hospital is going to call for not the 8 or so doctors we have now, but 17.
Yeah.
So we have to double the number of doctors here when the hospital opens. And we won't get to double right away, but the hospital will have the capacity and will require 17 doctors to operate it, apparently.
It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. The hospital, as we did sort of shift over towards, and for this new program that's going to be coming. The exact timelines aren't made official, made public yet, but I'd imagine leading into the fall. I mean, they're not going to sit on this for over a year, I wouldn't imagine. I would hope they wouldn't.
The course is planned. They're hoping to start the course 10 months from now.
Yeah.
January 1st. I don't know if they'll make it, but that's the plan.
Well, we'll wait and see, and we'll definitely keep you up to date on that. Now, if you'd like to read a little bit more about it, you can find the story on page 1, obviously, of this week's edition of the Banner Press, continued on to page 19. Ken also has a separate story where he gets the town's perspective. And before we shift, we'll go into this a little bit. You can find that on page 17 of the Banner Press. But you were able to chase down a little bit of detail from the town before we went to print, correct, Ken?
Yeah, just a little bit. And they welcome the announcement. Obviously, the town is ecstatic about it. And they're very concerned, though, about timelines because, they got to get not building the building, but making an addition if it's needed or improvements to the building is one thing. And that's a timeline that's going to be worrisome. But the other thing is to get the approval so they can go ahead and do it and then find the people do it. The money's there to do it. The town is in actually pretty good shape reserves-wise, and so they're going to be able to do it financially. So, yeah, that's the big concern is timing.
Yep.
Timing is a huge concern because it's only 10 months.
It's going to be very interesting to see how it pans out. All right, let's shift over. This week we're going to talk about Ken Waddell's editorial. Every week in the Banner and Press there is a little bit of opinion, a little bit of perspective on the perspective page from Ken Waddell. And this week, Ken, you shift into political overdrive, as it were, with this new political party for the province. Yeah,
I've been phoned by political parties many, many times in the 33 years that I've been involved in the business here. And I was involved in politics before that. But this group called me, and I advised them that, I appreciate what they're saying, and I fully understand their frustration. The problem is that if they were to actually win some seats, I think it's going to almost guarantee the opposite effect they're looking for, and that is for a conservative government, because it could drive quite a few seats into the NDP fold, which certainly the Conservative Party doesn't want that, and the Keystone Party doesn't want that either. But I think more than that, the Keystone Party wants to see a shake-up in politics. And in my column, I said, I likened the Progressive Conservative Party to Manitoba to a garden highly suited for planting seeds of discontent, because they've had their problems. There's no question about that. They've been in disarray to some extent for a long time. But the other point in the column is that the only time the Conservative Party of Manitoba, Progressive Conservative Manitoba, has been successful is when they had two very conservative leaders. One was Gary Filmon, and the other one was Brian Pallister. In between, they've tried different flavors and different ways of doing things, and it turned to crap in their hands, and they lost government. And they were down around 19 seats there for quite a while. And then when Pallister came in, he brought a somewhat disorganized party back to paying attention and doing things right. And some people will rankle when I say that, but I stand by that. Pallister did a lot of things right when he started, and the right being, 1, getting organized, 2, raising money, 3, stating clearly what you're going to do and then doing it.
Yeah.
Now, in the latter stages of his career, he made some mistakes. There's no question about that. I think he would even admit that. But he tried to fight the federal government on the COVID thing and failed, because you can't stand up to the federal government because they hold all the money on these kind of things. But I think Pallister was somewhat correct in his initial approach to the COVID thing, but that's a whole another issue. The thing being is there enough discontent there for this party to actually get some seats and elect some people? And I don't know that.
It's very interesting as well, because Manitoba has a different sort of structure to it than some of these other provinces that have had very successful provincial political parties. You just have to look a little bit west for the Saskatchewan Party. However, Saskatchewan has 2 fair-sized communities and a lot of rural area. So that's that demographic. Then you look at Wild Rose, which is sort of discontinued now. You had 2 very large cities in Alberta. One of them historically very much NDP oriented, that's Edmonton. The other one very much conservative oriented, that being Calgary. So at least you had that large sort of place to be able to mine some votes. Manitoba's different though, because in Manitoba you only have the one large city, one significant city. It's 70%, it's roughly about 70%, maybe 75% of our population.
That's right.
The election turns on what happens in Winnipeg. Whether we want to believe it or not, whether we like it or not, we'd like to think our vote is just as important as anyone else's. But Winnipeg's vote is more important than ours. Let's be honest about that.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to remind ourselves about the demographics here. The largest city in Manitoba is Winnipeg at 700 or maybe even 750,000. The next largest is Brandon at less than 70,000.
Yeah.
That's an awful drop.
Under 60.
Under 60?
Technically
Okay.
Under 60.
So it's less than 10% of the next largest city. And then after Brandon, I think you go to Thompson or Steinbach.
Steinbach now at 18.
Yeah.
19. Yeah.
And then down from there, you've got Winkler and Morden and Thompson are the next 3 big ones.
Well, let's put it to you this way. Let's give you this perspective. The town of Neepawa is the 12th largest community in Manitoba. That tells you how population heavy Winnipeg truly is, because that's impressive. That's a real eye opener.
It's pretty good for a city that's built around the drain hole in the bathtub. I'm sorry. It's a horrible floodplain that it's on, and it's cost hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to remediate it.
Yeah.
Just because those damn canoes could pull up so easy way back in the day at the Forks, eh?
Well, again, we talk about sort of the Keystone Party siphoning votes away from the Conservatives. I was at the meeting that occurred in Gladstone a few weeks ago, where they're trying to drum up some interest. And their plan is, optimistically, 8 to 10 individuals running in specific ridings where they believe they have legitimate opportunity for this first election. They have no pie in the sky thoughts of they're going to take over here. They want to do this in their version the right way here. And they had questions about, well, aren't you going to sort of siphon off from the progressive conservatives? And they said, where we're planning on going right now, no. These are politically right-leaning strongholds. Even if they were to siphon off votes, a considerable amount of votes from the conservatives, Ken, they say that it's still no way. There's very little opportunity for the NDP to take those ridings. So they're seeing this as just being the viable option or the other option when it comes to the right now.
You see, I think what they should have done is that it's a relatively transparent process. If you want to get involved in a political party, you buy a membership, you attend the AGM, you get elected as a delegate to the annual meeting, and you make sure your local constituency is strong. Very, very few associations for any party follow that formula. But it is very, very simple, very simple.
They have made a heavy emphasis as well about that's what they're going to do. Whether they do, that remains to be seen, but they have been selling that point that you just brought up really strong at every single meeting they've been having.
What happens is that political parties get lazy and they, oh, well, Joe did it last year. Yeah, Joe will do it again. And on it goes. And they elect delegates, and sometimes the delegates, it's expensive. I mean, it costs money to go and be away for 2 or 3 days in hotels and all this stuff. It's a pain in the butt. Been there, done that. Mm-hmm. But it has to be done if the parties are going to stay strong. I don't care which stripe it is. The parties are going to stay strong. You have to have good annual meetings. You have to have good constituency meetings, and very, very few do that.
It's going to be very interesting to see how all of this plays out. If you want to get a little bit of perspective, you can find it on the opinion page on page 4, Perspectives, in this week's edition of the Banner and Press. All right, we got ourselves a special feature this week. We've had so many special features over the last few weeks as hockey seasons start to wind down. This is the last big one for our local hockey clubs, and it is specifically for the Neepawa Tigers Hockey Club. We've got our player roundup there of all the different rosters showing our support for the Tigers as they gear up and get into the Westman High School Hockey League playoffs. They finished 4th in the league this season out of the 18 or 19 teams in there, so they're in the championship bracket. As we record this, actually, and we're going to have the news in the next edition of the paper, the game was played after our publication deadline. They were able to defeat the team they're playing in the first round from Waddell in their first game. It's a best-of-3 series, so they're at least promised one more home game here in Neepawa at the Yellowhead Center. So hopefully we got to wish them luck on that, and hopefully you'll go out and support them. They got a game coming up Friday, March 3rd. Well, they could. If they win in Waddell, that series is over and they move on to the next round. So I guess you'll have to keep a close eye on the Yellowhead Center schedule to see if they're going to be playing on Friday night or not.
Yeah, we wish them well. It's noted there that the Neepawa Banner Press and all the businesses that supported that feature do wish them well, and they're very proud of the boys of what they've been able to do.
That's right. And it's wonderful to see all these businesses support them in this way. Safeway, Harris Pharmacy, Taylor, 3D's Car Wash, Farmer's Edge. I could go through them all, but then that just turns into a commercial. But it's always nice to be able to see them step up in this way. They did it with the Titans. They did it with the Farmers as well. So we're very appreciative of that in a big way. So slight aside on this as well. We also have in this week's edition a few pictures. Congratulations to a pair of players from the Neepawa Tigers hockey team that got league accolades. I'm talking, of course, about Jory Kobacki and Ward Brister, who each received scoring awards. Jory was the leading scorer for the entire league, the Westman High School Hockey League. Came out this season 113 points in just 32 games. That is so impressive. and he is the leading scorer for the league. And Ward was the leading scorer as a defenseman for the league, 67 points in 31 games. So in the last regular season game last week, a game they won against the Dauphin Clippers, there was a ceremony just before the game, and they received their trophies. We were able to get a picture of that. You can find that picture, as well as some pictures from the game. Jory had a great goal, the first goal of the game, Ken, where he came in on a breakaway and was able to net it in there. And I just happened to be, for a nice change of pace, I was in the right place at the right time. I was able to get that picture, and it was kind of neat. So I'm very glad to be able to have gotten that shot. I'm very glad to see that the Tigers were able to end off the regular season with a big win.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it was a good shot, or it is a good shot. You get 3 phases of it there on page 12 of the paper, so be sure and pick up a paper to see it.
It's always good as well when you get the goal, because the goalies always keep the water bottles right on the top there. When you see the water bottle just pop up into the air, you know you got a good one. So, all right. We're going to get back into the sports a little bit later in the show, but let's talk about some town council stuff right now. We're just going to very quickly delve into it. It's a little bit of housekeeping that goes on each and every year at this time. The communities across Manitoba are asked by the Manitoba Water Services Board to sort of come up with their wish list of priorities for water and sewer work that they'd like to get some assistance on. The board delves out a little bit of financial support each and every year to be able to help communities to do something. And Neepawa has very much been able to trade off of that the last decade with some major projects. And this year they got their wish list. I'm not going to go into all the details on that. There's 5 they came up with. The most interesting one, I think, is, well, okay, it's not the most interesting one in my opinion, but sorry, actually, no. I sort of had to switch off the computer in the brain and restart it there for a second. It is actually the most expensive one, Highway 16 Extension Project. Now, for those of you that don't know what that actually is, that's water and sewer to the hospital.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And an expensive one.
Yeah, I was talking to you, getting a little more detail on that before the show, because I thought, you know, we already got a water line out there. Well, yeah, we do. It goes to the hog plant. It was put out there in 1988. But it's going to be a redundant loop line, as they call it. And I didn't know what that was. I should have known, but I didn't. But anyway, if the water tower were to go down or run out of water, they will be able to feed the hospital from an extra loop from the water treatment plant.
Yep.
And so that the hospital would never be without water. And I don't think then High Life would be either. There's been times when they've had to shut off water to High Life, which of course means a major problem for the plant. But this redundant loop system is going to be a fair amount of expense there, plus sewage, which is badly needed out in the town anyway. And they're going to do some upgrading of a meter at High Life and a few other things there. The Mill Street, not a very sexy project, but the Mill Street lift station is going to be moved because it was flooded or almost put out of commission when it flooded last year. So it's going to be moved up to higher ground, and so it'll be out of the floodplain. And that's going to be a major expense. But if it had gone down, if they hadn't been able to keep it sandbagged and extra pumps and whatever going, we'd had sewage backed up all over town.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the problem with building on a hill, and you got these lift stations.
Now, I do hope that you will take a few minutes and read that article laying out all those details. And I know it's not as quote-unquote sexy as some of these other stories or as visually interesting with some great action shots. But these are the types of stories in a community like Neepawa that are extremely important for the future and the prosperity of a community. None of us really care and none of us really talk about water and sewer until it goes wrong. All right, and fortunately, the last little while in this community, water and sewer has not gone wrong. In fact, it's moved forward in a very progressive, positive way. So hopefully, it's going to be able to continue to go that way, because we don't want to share stories about water and sewer that are exciting or visually interesting, because that's going to make a mess.
Yeah, they're messy and expensive.
Yeah.
Very messy, very expensive.
All right, we're running a little low on time. Got about 5 minutes left, so we're going to delve into some of these other ones really quickly. Casper Warehan has a few stories in here this week, including an Inspire Studios based out of Minnedosa doing a open studios night, and that's on page 2. It's a very creative thing that's going on in our community, our neighbor community just down the road, and we always like to be able to share these types of things. Because even though we are the Neepawa Banner Press, we do try and pride ourselves as being a regional community paper. So anytime we're able to share a little bit from Gladstone, Carberry, Minnedosa, wherever, St. Rose, it's always something we appreciate. So I hope you take a minute or two to check that one out. Is there anything else you want to chime in on that, Ken?
Well, I picked up on that story and turned it over to Casper. I'm always impressed with what they do at Inspire Studio in Minnedosa. They're so creative and so expansive in how they do things. It's well worth the read and well worth dropping down there. They have some tremendous pieces down there for sale if you want to add some decor to your home.
Yeah, that's right. Stay in Minnedosa. I'm just going to share this. You can find it on page 20 of this week's edition. Casper also did a great story about a staff members for Hockey Manitoba. And I guess this is the first ever all-female U18 coaching team. And they are all based out of Minnedosa. We had this tip shared with us. Unfortunately, my time restraints were a little tight this week, so I had to pass this on to Casper. But Casper did a tremendous job sharing some of that information. So I really do hope you're going to take a minute to check that out. Very interesting and historic. Sports-oriented story.
That's really cool.
Yeah. All right, let's get back on the ice. Neepawa Titans had a couple games over the weekend against the Portage Terriers. They did not play out the way they were hoping. Terriers are the powerhouse of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. Ended up winning both games, putting Neepawa's playoff hopes on the precipice. Fortunately, they had a game last night after our publication deadline in Niverville in which they were able to beat the Nighthawks. So hope is still alive. It's going to take a little bit of help down the road from some other teams losing, but hope's still alive. But they got to do their part, and hopefully you'll do your part as well. Go down over the weekend, check it out. They're going to have a home game against the Steinbach Pistons. That's on Sunday, right, Ken?
Yeah, Sunday at 6:30.
Yeah. So only 2 more home games left. That one, and I believe 1 more against the Selkirk Steelers to wrap up the season.
That's correct, yeah.
All right, so hopefully you'll be able to take a little bit of time and check that out. And that's about it. There's so much more we could be talking about, but there's only so many minutes in our show. So that's why you got to pick up a copy of the paper. You can either pick up a physical copy of it anywhere in Neepawa or surrounding communities, or you can find it online at mywestman.ca. If you have any story suggestions as well, we always like to hear them. And we always try to get to them as quickly as we can. And you can do so by giving us a call at 476-3401 or sending us an email at news@neepawabanner.com. If it's sports related, sports@neepawabanner.com. Once again, we try to hit as many different things in as many different communities as is possible. You know, time permitting.
Time permitting. Yeah, the last thing we had on our list was the Tiger Hills. The Farmers, they lost in their second series, but they won their first one, so they had a pretty good year. So hopefully they'll regroup and come back at it again next year. So.
That's right, and we're going to keep covering that because Gladstone and Minnedosa are going to be playing in the next round, the Eastern Division Final. So I'll probably be making a road trip out to arenas even colder than the Yellowhead out in Minnedosa and Gladstone to check out at least one game. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. And as usual, we always appreciate you taking the time out and sitting here and watching the show. And again, Ken, good to have. I know you're always busy. As busy as I am, you're always twice as busy, so appreciate that.
Oh, I'm not that busy. I'll be 75 next month, so I'm slowing down.
Oh, it's just a case of you gotta look busy, right?
I look busy. I just not as busy as I used to was.
Oh, well, thank you either way for being on the show, and once again, thank you. We always appreciate you tuning in and watching the stories behind the stories right here on NAC TV. So until next week, thank you.